Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you getting on? Welcome to a brand new Starfield video. So, with the showcase just a few days away this weekend, I thought we'd take a look at a few things that I expect and hope we will be seeing on Sunday. Okay, so yeah, the Starfield Showcase is just a few days away. It's going out on Sunday the 11th of June, which is end of this week. I'm very, very much looking forward to it. Going to be all over that. Cannot wait to see more and obviously eventually get my hands on Starfield. As I have said before, Bethesda plus sci-fi is a match made in heaven for me, so really, really looking forward to this. Can't wait to see more. But obviously there are quite a few questions. It's been a year since the last showcase. It has been several months since we last saw any particular new information about the game from Bethesda. We've got a couple of tidbits here and there, and we pulled a couple of bits and pieces from things like the ESRB rating, which I've covered in recent videos, but in terms of actual new information about the game, we've not had a vast amount, so definitely looking forward to seeing a bit more on Sunday. So, random little fact before we jump into the things I hope and expect we will see. Did you realise that this Sunday will actually be 5 years to the day since they announced Starfield, which is quite cool. I suspect Bethesda did realise this, but yeah, it was 11th of June back in 2018 it was initially announced, which is also when Fallout 76 was officially announced as well, incidentally. But yeah, back at E3, that was pre-COVID and everything, so quite a cool little factoid I saw on Twitter and then confirmed, so yeah, that's quite cool. So, a whole bunch of things that I expect to see and hope to see. Speculatory, of course. We will find out on Sunday whether or not I'm right. But, jumping in, we're going to start with a kind of zero, I guess, rather than number one, because this is something I imagine we'll see bits of, but I kind of hope we don't see too much, and that is story. We've had little fragments of information about the story so far. We know we're searching for an artifact. Courtesy of the ESRB rating recently, we found out that we start out as a miner who discovers an artifact. We know there are visions. We are searching the galaxy for these artifacts to bring them together that apparently are building something, so we found out this time last year. And yeah, that's about as far as we've got. There appear to be some kind of ancient temples possibly involved in these artifacts as well. So yeah, that's all we've got about the story, other than of course the fact there are loads of different factions and the closest thing you can get in a video game to a living, breathing galaxy going on around the series of events. So there's all of that. But I imagine we'll get a kind of an overview of that, pulling it together, and maybe a few extra snippets of information about it. But I really hope we don't get too much, because exploring this and discovering it on its own, I'm not exactly concerned about spoilers, because I don't think Bethesda or anybody else are going to actually spoil anything. In fact, Aaron Greenberg recently said on Twitter that they're adamantly not going to spoil anything. But the less you know, the more wonder and surprise you get when you discover things. So, kind of hope we don't get too much there. Anyway, so that's a 0 point. Number one, combat. Yeah, we've seen a bit of combat so far, so it seems very unlikely that a showcase like this would go by without combat being present. That would be astounding if that was the case, in a slightly worrying way. But I think we can bet against that being the case. I'm pretty darn sure we'll be seeing combat. There were a whole bunch of criticisms this time last year regarding what that combat looked like. Some valid, some significantly less valid criticism, but there are suggestions that it's come on a fair bit in the last year or so. There was a rumour a while ago, which is pretty completely unsubstantiated, but has a certain amount of sense to it, as to maybe whether or not id Software might have chipped in to helping them out. No idea whether or not that's any truth to that, probably not. But on the other hand, it would be an in-family, I suppose, group of people who could help out. So either way, fingers crossed, hopefully the combat has had a bit of polish. We did find out very recently that hitting things with axes is a thing that you can do in Starfield, although we have not seen any melee combat at all yet. So that's interesting. Hopefully we'll be seeing a bit of melee combat, that would be cool. A little exploration on that and confirmation and things would be quite cool, but as I say, the ESRB even rating on it mentioned melee combat, so yeah, definitely want to see a bit of that. And we've seen a very, very brief snippet this time last year of zero-G combat, so is that going to be a thing? Is it going to be a one-off kind of feature in one location? Is it something that's going to happen more often? Hopefully more often, and that would be really quite cool. I'd like to see a little bit more about that as well. And always down for seeing a few new weapons and things like that and getting an idea of what sort of hardware we'll have at our disposal. We've seen a few bits and pieces on last year's showcase. There's some cool stuff in there. But definitely want to see what else will be available and the range and sort of things. We've seen sort of some machine guns, ARs, pistols, possibly maybe a rocket launcher as well. But hopefully we'll see some more expansion on that. That would be cool. So, sort of building off on that, the crafting system is something that Bethesda usually show in their showcases. They talk about that in previous games, so I imagine they will in this one. They talked about it a little bit this time last year. Hopefully we'll get a bit more of a look at how that ties into the weapon system. Hopefully things like suit upgrades. I'd really like to see stuff like that. We've seen a whole bunch of different spacesuits and styles and stuff, including the character creation showcase last year, that sort of showed your character in a bunch of different styles of outfit. So what you can do to upgrade your suit, different types of suit, things like that, space suits and stuff, will be very, very cool to see a little bit more about and how that blends into the crafting system. The other thing is, crafting system and outposts and hirelings are all, it would appear, kind of interlinked, so definitely would like to find out more about that. Speaking of the outpost system, this is the base building system in Starfield, which, shocking absolutely nobody, I think, at this point, given the last 15, 20 years of Bethesda games, there will be a base building system in it. Obviously, if you go back at least as far as Oblivion, and think off the top of my head, you had player housing in that, you had player housing in Fallout 3, in Skyrim, obviously Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 have built on this further and further, so no surprises that Starfield will as well. We've seen so far about 4 seconds of it. We've seen a little menu, somebody snapping together some prefabbed habitats into a kind of Subnautica in space style structure, and I'm really hoping we're going to get a bit more free building kind of mechanics to it, and I would love to see more of this system anyway. With Fallout 4, a lot of what we saw was snapping the prefabs together in the showcase for that back in 2015, which then obviously turned out to be a lot more flexible than it initially appeared, even in that showcase of it, so that's quite cool. The big question is whether or not that'll be the case in Starfield at the minute, because all we've seen thus far is a few finished rooms, at least in terms of the structural components, just being kind of bolted together. Definitely want to see more of that. Hopefully we can do more than just bolt finished stuff together. There are bits and pieces in place outside that we've noticed as well, but we'll have to wait and see. On the other hand, much like with, say, something like Subnautica, with Subnautica being underwater, sealed rooms make sense because, you know, you don't want the water getting in. Same issue with building on potentially planets and moons and things with no atmosphere, or potentially even, interestingly, a toxic atmosphere, then sort of contained habitats so that you can survive in them has a certain logical sense, but it does handcuff the potential creativity a little bit. So here's hoping there's a way around that. Bethesda have found in their development of the system, but definitely want to know a lot more about it. We do know we can hire people to come back to our outposts and work at them for presumably some sort of outpost-related buff or functionality. Would love to know more about that. Companions is another thing. Would like to know what happens with companions when they're at your outpost. Do you leave them at your outpost if you're not taking them with you? Or how many do you take with you? Do they have a role on your ship? Things like that. We know we can crew our ships and have people work them. So all of that system, I really want to know more about how people and NPCs and hirelings and companions and all that interact with ships and outposts and the player and stuff. Lots to be found out about there. And I imagine some of that will take an appearance on Sunday, hopefully. Speaking of companions, we've met Vasco thus far. He's the only one we've actually met. That is our robot friend, who is an absolute legend already and really very, very cool. Definitely want to see more about him, but it would be cool to meet a few of the other potentially recruitable individuals as well, sort of getting a little look at them. Mind you, Bethesda don't normally do that before launch. You kind of have to find them in the game. Looking back at the Fallout 4 showcase at E3 back in 2015 again, which was the last big single-player showcase they did, then with that, you actually did see several of the companions in the footage. They just didn't highlight them as companions. They just sort of popped up in footage, so who knows? Maybe we've already seen some of the potential recruitable individuals. It's quite possible. But it will be interesting to find out a little bit more about them, and at the very least, as I say, how they function with other sort of mechanics and parts of the game. So, spaceships was something I touched on as well regarding companions. We've seen a little bit about that and how you can snap modules together and modify and change your ship to change its functionality, change its look, change its style, that sort of thing. Definitely up for finding out a little bit more about that and the role of spaceships in the game. Obviously, jumping between star systems is part of it. Travelling around within star systems seems to be the case. We've seen some of the footage on that, and there's spaceship combat. That's cool. Definitely want to see more about that. Can we disable and board other ships? Can we steal other people's ships? Can we board things like boarding space stations? I'm pretty sure there's going to be some of that involved, but seeing a little bit more of that side of things would be interesting as well. They've talked about things like smuggling, which obviously would involve your ship, using that to smuggle stuff, Han Solo style, so I would definitely like to hear more about that sort of role, as well as the roles with other factions, stuff like that. Again, Bethesda don't tend to talk about factions too much, so we'll see. That may well be something we have to wait for September for, but the sort of other functions of your ship and its roles beyond just a method of transportation and space combat, but also those things as well I would like to see more about as well, because, yeah, spaceships, space game, sci-fi game, big focus of this. It'd be really interesting to sort of explore the systems and functionality and role of your craft as you're running around in Starfield, so definitely want to find out a little bit more about that. And the last thing I wanted to mention, which I guess would be 6 or 7, depending on whether or not you count the 0 as 1, does the game have a photo mode? I'm putting my money on yes. Big fingers crossed, because I get the feeling this game's going to be the sort that really benefits from it. Fallout 76 has got a photo mode, and people love using that, and I think Bethesda are well aware of that, so hopefully we will have a photo mode, because I think there's going to be a lot of stuff we want to take pictures of in Starfield, and yeah, I love doing that. Fill up my hard drive with video game screenshots. But still, yeah, there's a bunch of things I imagine we will see. A couple of things we probably might not maybe mentioned in there, but some stuff that I do want to see. Let me know in the comments the sort of things you would be interested in seeing this weekend and what you think might show up as part of the showcase. Definitely curious to see what you guys have got your eyes open for and are watching out for. Cannot wait myself. As I say, that is happening on Sunday. That's 11th of June. I will absolutely be covering that to the nines. I haven't made up my mind yet as to whether or not I might restream it, but either way, I will definitely be talking about it, breaking it down, making videos, reacting to it, all that good stuff in the days following the showcase. So likes, subs, notification bell, all that good stuff, and then you will be up to speed with what's happening post the showcase on Sunday. And obviously, as we get nearer to Starfield, my hype is bound to grow, and What's It Drops will be all over that. It's going to be a very big thing. Obviously, we've got base building, and I'll be streaming my way through the game, so videos and builds and live streams and all that stuff of Starfield, once it comes out, will be coming alongside Fallout, so definitely up for that. But for now, thank you very much for watching. If you did like the video, you know where all the buttons and stuff are down below. Channel memberships and merch store and all that good stuff down there. If you're interested in checking it out, very, very much appreciate it. Really, really helps out. Massive thank you to everyone who has done that already. And yeah, join us for live streams. We are playing Fallout 76 at the moment. We're sort of wrapping up Redfall, and I'm pondering what we're going to do for the summer as we run towards Starfield as well in the meantime on the streaming front. So yeah, do join us for those. It's good fun. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.